A 15-year-old boy came home with a Porsche, and his parents began to yell and scream. "Where did you get that car?" He calmly told them, "I bought it today." "With what money?" demanded his parents. "We know what a Porsche costs." "Well," said the boy, "this one cost me $15. The parents began to yell even louder. "Who would sell a car like that for $15? They asked. "It was the lady up the street," said the boy. "Don't know her name. They just moved in. She saw me ride past on my bike and asked me if I wanted to buy a Porsche for $15. "Oh my goodness," moaned the mother. "She must be a child abuser. Who knows what she will do next? John, you go right up there and see what's going on." So the boy's father walked up the street to the house where the lady lived and found her out in the yard, calmly planting flowers. He introduced himself as the father of the boy, to whom she has sold a Porsche for $15, and demanded to know why she did it. "Well," she said, "I thought my husband was on a business trip, but I learned from a friend he has run off to Hawaii with his secretary and really doesn't intend to come back. This morning I got a phone call from my husband. He claimed he was stranded and asked me to sell his new Porsche and send him the money. So I did." According to a news report, a certain private school in Sydney recently was faced with a unique problem. A number of young teen-old girls were beginning to use lipstick and would put it on in the bathroom. That was fine, but after they put on their lipstick, they would press their lips to the mirror, leaving dozens of little lip prints. Every night, the maintenance man would remove them, and the next day, the girls would put them back. Finally, the principal decided that something had to be done. She called all the girls to the bathroom and met them there with the maintenance man. She explained that all these lip prints were causing a major problem for the custodian, who had to clean the mirrors every night. To demonstrate how difficult it had been to clean the mirrors, she asked the maintenance man to show the girls how much effort was required. He took out a long-handled squeegee, dipped it in the toilet, and cleaned the mirror with it. Since then, there have been no lip prints on the mirror. An elderly couple was having dinner one evening when the husband reached across the table, took his wife's hand in his, and said, "Martha, soon we will be married 50 years, and there's something I have to know. In all of these 50 years, have you ever been unfaithful to me?" Martha replied, "Well, Henry, I have to be honest with you. Yes, I've been unfaithful to you 3 times during these 50 years, but always for a good reason." Henry was obviously hurt by his wife's confession, but said, "I never suspected. Can you tell me what you mean by good reasons?" Martha said, "The first time was shortly after we were married and we were about to lose our little house because we couldn't pay the mortgage. Do you remember that one evening I went to see the banker and the next day he notified you that the loan would be extended?" Henry recalled the visit to the banker and said, "I can forgive you for that." "You saved our home, but what about the second time?" Martha asked. "And do you remember when you were so sick, but we didn't have the money to pay for the heart surgery you needed?" "Well, I went to see your doctor one night, and, if you recall, he did the surgery at no charge." "I recall that," said Henry, "and you did it to save my life, so of course I can forgive you for that. Now tell me about the third time." "All right," Martha said. "So, do you remember when you ran for president of your golf club, and you needed 73 more votes?" The elderly man fainted. Dorothy and Edna, two senior widows, are talking. Dorothy: "That nice George Johnson asked me out for a date. I know you went out with him last week, and I wanted to talk with you about him before I give him my answer." Edna: "Well, I'll tell you. He shows up at my apartment punctually at 7 p.m., dressed like such a gentleman in a fine suit, and he brings me such beautiful flowers. Then he takes me downstairs, and what's there but a luxury car, a limousine, a uniformed chauffeur and all. Then he takes me out for dinner, a marvelous dinner of lobster, champagne, and dessert, and after-dinner drinks. Then we go to see a show. Let me tell you, Dorothy, I enjoyed it so much I could have just died from pleasure. So then we are coming back to my apartment, and he turns into an animal. Completely crazy, he tears off my expensive new dress and has his way with me 2 times. Dorothy: "Goodness gracious. So you're telling me I shouldn't go out with him?" Edna: "No, no, no. I'm just saying, wear an old dress." An Arizona Highway Patrol officer stops an old Harley rider for traveling faster than the posted speed limit. He asks the old biker his name. "Fred," he replies. "Fred what?" the officer asks. "Just Fred." The old man responds. The officer is in a good mood and thinks he might just give the old biker a break and write him out a warning instead of a ticket. The officer then presses him for the last name. The old man tells him that he used to have a last name but lost it. The officer thinks that he has a nutcase on his hands, but plays along with it. "Tell me, Fred, how did you lose your last name?" The old biker replies, "It's a long story, so stay with me. I was born Fred Johnson. I studied hard and got good grades. When I got older, I realized that I wanted to be a doctor. I went through college, medical school, internship, and residency, and finally got my degree, so I was Fred Johnson, Maryland. After a while, I got bored being a doctor, so I decided to go back to school. Dentistry was my dream. I got all the way through school and got my degree. So then I was Fred Johnson, Maryland. DDDs. I got bored doing dentistry, so I started fooling around with my assistant, and she gave me VD. So now I was Fred Johnson, Maryland, DDS with VD. Well, the ADA found out about the VD, so they took away my DDS. Then I was Fred Johnson, Maryland with VD. Then the AMA found out about the ADA taking away my DDS because of the VD, so they took away my MD, leaving me as Fred Johnson with VD. Then the VD took away my Johnson, so now I'm just Fred. The officer walked away in tears, laughing. A senior citizen drove his brand new Corvette convertible out of the dealership. Taking off down the road, he floored it to 80 miles per hour, enjoying the wind blowing through what little gray hair he had left. Amazing, he thought as he flew down one, 94, pushing the pedal even more. Looking in his rearview mirror, he saw a state trooper behind him, lights flashing and siren blaring. He floored it to 100 miles per hour, then 110, then 120. Suddenly he thought, what am I doing? I'm too old for this, and pulled over to await the trooper's arrival. Pulling in behind him, the trooper walked up to the Corvette, looked at his watch, and said, "Sir, my shift ends in 30 minutes. Today is Friday. If you can give me a reason for speeding that I've never heard before, I'll let you go." The old gentleman paused. Then he said, "Years ago, my wife ran off with a state trooper. I thought you were bringing her back." "Have a good day, sir," replied the trooper. Once upon a time, there lived a king. The king had a beautiful daughter, the princess. But there was a problem. Everything the princess touched would melt. No matter what, metal, wood, stone, everything she touched would melt. Because of this, men were afraid of her. Nobody would dare marry her. The king despaired. What could he do to help his daughter? He consulted his wizards and magicians. One wizard told the king, "If your daughter touches one thing that does not melt in her hands, she will be cured." The king was overjoyed and came up with a plan. The next day he held a competition. Any man that could bring his daughter an object that would not melt would marry her and inherit the king's wealth. 3 young princes took up the challenge. The first brought a sword of the finest steel. But alas, when the princess touched it, it melted. The prince went away sadly. The second prince brought diamonds. He thought diamonds are the hardest substance in the world and would not melt. But alas, once the princess touched them, they melted. He too was sent away disappointed. The third prince approached. He told the princess, "Put your hand in my pocket and feel what is in there." The princess did as she was told, though she turned red. She felt something hard. She held it in her hand, and it did not melt. The king was overjoyed. Everybody in the kingdom was overjoyed. The third prince married the princess, and they both lived happily ever after. Question: what was in the prince's pants? Of course, they melt in your mouth, not in your hand. What were you thinking? 4 old retired guys are walking down a street in Darwin. They turned a corner and saw a sign that said, "Old Timers Bar, all drinks 10 cents. They look at each other, then go in, thinking this is too good to be true. The old bartender says in a voice that carries across the room, "Come on in and let me pour one for you. What'll it be, gentlemen?" There seemed to be a fully stocked bar, so each of the men asked for a martini. In short order, the bartender serves up 4 iced martinis, shaken, not stirred, and says, "That'll be 10 cents each, please." The 4 men stare at the bartender for a moment, then look at each other. They can't believe their good luck. They pay the 40 cents, finish their martinis, and order another round. Again, 4 excellent martinis are produced, with the bartender again saying, "That's 40 cents, please." They pay the 40 cents, but their curiosity is more than they can stand. They have each had 2 martinis, and so far they've spent less than $1. Finally, one of the men says, "How can you afford to serve martinis as good as these for a dime apiece?" "I'm a retired tailor from Sydney," the bartender said, "and I always wanted to own a bar. Last year I hit the lottery for $25 million and decided to open this place. Every drink costs a dime. Wine, liquor, beer, it's all the same." "Wow, that's quite a story," says one of the men. The 4 of them sipped at their martinis and couldn't help but notice 3 other guys at the end of the bar who didn't have drinks in front of them and hadn't ordered anything the whole time they were there. Sir. One man gestures at the 3 at the end of the bar without drinks and asks the bartender, "What's with them?" The bartender says, "Oh, they're retired teachers from Brisbane. They're waiting for happy hour when drinks are half price." 3 blondes were all applying for the last available position on the Texas Highway Patrol. The detective conducting the interview looked at the 3 of them and said, "So you'll all want to be cops, huh?" The blondes all nodded. The detective got up, opened a file drawer, and pulled out a folder. Sitting back down, he opened it and pulled out a picture and said, "To be a detective, you have to be able to detect. You must be able to notice things, such as distinguishing features and oddities, such as scars and so forth." So saying, he stuck the photo in the face of the first blonde and withdrew it after about 2 seconds. "Now," he said, "did you notice any distinguishing features about this man?" The blonde immediately said, "Yes, I did. He has only one eye." The detective shook his head and said, "Of course he has only one eye in this picture. It's the side profile of his face. You're dismissed." The first blonde hung her head and walked out of the office. The detective then turned to the second blonde, stuck the photo in her face for 2 seconds, pulled it back and said, "What about you? Notice anything unusual or outstanding about this man?" "Yes, he only has one ear." The detective put his head in his hands and exclaimed, "Didn't you hear what I just told the other lady? This is a profile of the man's face. Of course you can only see one ear. You're excused too." The second blonde sheepishly walked out of the office. The detective turned his attention to the third and last blonde and said, "This is probably a waste of time," but he flashed the photo in her face for a couple of seconds and withdrew it, saying, "All right, did you notice anything distinguishing or unusual about this man?" The blonde said, "I sure did. This man wears contact lenses." The detective frowned, took another look at the picture, and began looking at some of the papers in the folder. He looked up at the blonde with a puzzled expression and said, "You're absolutely right. His bio says he wears contacts. How in the world could you tell that by looking at his picture?" The blonde rolled her eyes and said, "Well, hello. With only one eye and one ear, he certainly can't wear glasses." A man walks into a bar and orders a drink. The bartender gives the man his drink, and the man asks, "If I show you something crazy, would you let me have free drinks for the rest of the night?" The bartender thinks for a minute and then says, "It would be something spectacular to take that offer." The man leans down and picks up a box and sets it on the bar. He opens the box, and inside is a small piano man who is only 1 foot tall and a little piano. The piano man starts playing classical music like Beethoven and Chopin. Once he finishes, the bartender is in utter disbelief. He tells the man, "You can have free drinks for the rest of the night, but only if you tell me where you got this." The man says, "In the alleyway behind your bar, there's a genie who is granting free wishes to everyone who wants them." Elated, the bartender heads behind his bar to see if it was true. A few minutes pass, and out of the alleyway erupts a cacophony of quacking. The bartender rushes back into the bar and shuts his door against a wave of thousands of ducks. He manages to secure the door and says to the man, "I think that the genie is hard of hearing, because after I asked for $1,000,000, these ducks appeared by the thousands." The man chuckles and says, "Did you really think I wished for a 12-inch pianist?" A guy goes into this bar, sits down, and orders a drink. While waiting, he sees a guy sitting kind at the bar who has a very big, muscular body but a little tiny head. So he asks the guy, "How is it that you have such a huge body and a small head?" The guy replied, "I was walking along the beach one day and I came across this bottle buried halfway in the sand. So I picked it up, brushed away the sand, and out popped this fine female genie. She said she would grant me 3 wishes for releasing her. For my first wish, I asked for $10 million, and poof, right there on the sand was $10,000. For my second wish, I asked for a luxury yacht, and poof, right there on the ocean was a 90-foot yacht. Finally, for my third wish, I asked to have sex with the genie, but she said that genies were not allowed to indulge in that kind of activity. So I said, come on, how about a little head? To celebrate their 7th anniversary, a man and his wife spend the weekend at an exclusive golf resort. He is a pretty good golfer, but she only just started. When they head down to the golf course after a lavish lunch and a bottle of champagne, they notice a beautiful mansion, a couple of 100 yards behind the first hole. Let's be extra careful, honey, the husband says. If we damage that house over there, it'll cost us a fortune. The wife nods, tees off, and bang, sends the ball right through the window of the mansion. Jesus Christ, the husband says. I told you to watch out for that house. All right, let's go up there, apologize, and see what the damage is. They walk up to the house and knock on the door. Come on in, a voice in the house says. The couple opens the door and enters the foyer. The living room is a mess. There are pieces of glass all over the floor and a broken bottle near the window. A man sits on the couch. When the couple enters the room, he gets up and says, Are you the guys who just broke my window? Yeah, the husband replies. Sorry about that. Not at all. It's I who has to thank you. I'm a genie and was trapped in that bottle for 1,000 years. You've just released me. To show my gratitude, I'm allowed to grant each of you a wish, but I'll require one favor in return. Really, that's great, the husband says. I want $1 million a year for the rest of my life. No problem, that's the least I can do. And you, what do you want? The genie asks, looking at the wife. I want a house in every country of the world, the wife says. The genie smiles. Consider it done. And what's this favor we must grant in return, Genie? The husband asks. Well, since I've been trapped in that stupid bottle for the last 1,000 years, I haven't had with a woman for a very long time. My wish is to sleep with your wife. The husband scratches his head, looks at the wife, and says, Well, we did get a lot of money in all these houses, honey, so I guess I'm fine, if it's all right with you. The genie and the wife disappear in a room upstairs and make love for an hour, while the husband stays in the living room. When they shine something and they are done, the genie rolls over, looks at the wife, and asks, How old exactly is your husband? 31, she replies. And he still believes in genies? That's amazing. One day, a fellow came into the bar with a cat, not just any cat, but a mean-looking ginger Tom. You could see the scars from across the room. But that wasn't the weirdest thing. A 6-foot ostrich, eyes like golf balls, followed them in. A real live ostrich. I asked the man what he wanted. I'll have a pint of bitter, he said. A pint of lager for the ostrich and a gin and tonic for the cat. The cat hissed at him. Make that a double gin and tonic, thanks. While I served the drinks, he paid, and they all knocked him back. It wasn't long before the ostrich came back to the bar and made it clear that it wanted the same again. Well, I poured them. I could feel the cat's eyes burning through me, as if he was checking that he got his double again. I took the drinks over to them, and the man paid, taking the cash from a purse tied around the ostrich's neck. This went on for a couple of hours, the man and the ostrich buying alternate rounds, while the cat just sat on the window shelf with his drink, looking fit to kill. The whole place got quiet. People sat and stared, and who could blame them? Eventually, I plucked up the courage to ask the fellow just what was going on. Can't a man have a quiet drink anymore? He rasped. So I said, No harm meant, but you've got to admit that you're a unique set of drinkers. He smiled, but there was no light in that smile. Okay, you want to know? I'll tell you. I was across town the other week, working on the new road. Amid the dirt and the rubble, I turned up this old brass lamp. I rubbed it, thinking there might be a date or inscription or something. Anyway, out comes this cloud of smoke, and a genie appeared. You know, turban, scimitar, and the whole works. And he tells me I've got just one wish. And before you ask, yes, I did wish for a long-legged bird with a tight but this wasn't what I had in mind. Two guys were walking in the woods one day, and they all of a sudden came across a bear. The bear noticed them and started growling and generally getting really mean. The bear started to chase one of the guys who, as it turns out, was from Czechoslovakia. The bear soon caught up with him and ate him alive. The other guy turned around and ran for his life. A little while later, the second guy found a park ranger station and told his story. The ranger took his gun, and they both went out in search of the bear in order to destroy it. Soon they came across two bears, one male and one female. The ranger turned to the other guy and said, "Quick, tell me which bear ate your friend." The ranger leveled his gun and got ready to shoot. "I'm not really sure," said the other guy. "They both look similar." "Quick, make up your mind," said the ranger. "Okay," said the other. "It was the male." The ranger promptly aimed and shot the female bear. The male ran off. Using his knife, the ranger cut open the belly of the female and found the body of the other man. "But why didn't you shoot the male when I thought it was the male who ate my friend?" the other man asked. "Well," said the ranger, "I never trust anyone who says that the check is in the mail." A Vaseline sales rep was conducting a survey at a local drugstore, asking women if they used her product. Most were too shy to answer, but a few younger women admitted they used it for certain activities. Then an older woman walked in with three young kids trailing behind her. The rep saw an opportunity and asked, "Excuse me, ma'am, do you and your husband use Vaseline during love?" The woman smiled and said, "Oh yes, we use it every time we make love." The rep, shocked, asked, "Wow, doesn't that much, you know?" The woman's eyes widened. "Oh, hell no. We smear it on the doorknob to keep these little monsters from busting in." This is a joke about a couple who had been happily married for years. The only friction in their marriage was the husband's habit of farting loudly every morning when he awoke. The noise would wake his wife, and the smell would make her eyes water and make her gasp for air. Every morning, she would plead with him to stop ripping them off because it was making her sick. He told her he couldn't stop it and that it was perfectly natural. She told him to see a doctor. She was concerned that one day he would blow his guts out. The years went by and he continued to rip them out. Then, one Christmas Day morning, as she was preparing the turkey for dinner and he was upstairs, sound asleep, she looked at the innards, neck, gizzard, liver, and all the spare parts, and a malicious thought came to her. She took the bowl and went upstairs where her husband was sound asleep, and gently pulling the bed covers back, she pulled back the elastic waistband of his underpants and emptied the bowl of turkey guts into his shorts. Sometime later, she heard her husband waken with his usual trumpeting, which was followed by a blood-curdling scream and the sound of frantic footsteps as he ran into the bathroom. The wife could hardly control herself as she rolled on the floor, laughing, tears in her eyes. After years of torture, she reckoned she had got him back pretty good. About 20 minutes later, her husband came downstairs in his blood-stained underpants, with a look of horror on his face. She bit her lip as she asked him what was the matter. He said, "Honey, you were right. All these years you have warned me, and I didn't listen to you." "What do you mean?" asked his wife. "Well, you always told me that one day I would end up farting my guts out, and today it finally happened. But by the grace of God, some Vaseline and 2 fingers, I think I got most of them back in." At last year's conference, we spoke about being more assertive with our husbands. Well, after the conference, I went home and told my husband that I would no longer cook for him and that he would have to do it himself. After the first day, I saw nothing. After the second day, I saw nothing. But after the third day, I saw that he had cooked a wonderful roast lamb. The crowd cheered. The second speaker from America stood up. After last year's conference, I went home and told my husband that I would no longer do his laundry and that he would have to do it himself. After the first day, I saw nothing. After the second day, I saw nothing. But after the third day, I saw that he had done not only his own washing, but my washing as well. The crowd cheered. The third speaker from Italy stood up. After last year's conference, I went home and told my husband that I would no longer do his shopping and that he would have to do it himself. After the first day, I saw nothing. After the second day, I saw nothing. But after the third day, I could see a little bit out of my left eye. One dark night in the small town of Garfield, New Jersey, a fire started inside the local sausage factory. In a blink, the building was engulfed in flames. The alarm went out to all the fire departments for miles around. When the first volunteer firefighters appeared on the scene, the sausage company president rushed to the fire chief and said, "All of our secret sausage recipes are in the vault in the center of the plant. They have to be saved, so I will donate $50,000 to the fire company that brings them out and delivers them to me." but the roaring flames held the firefighters off. Soon, more fire departments had to be called in because the situation became desperate. As the firemen arrived, the president shouted out that the offer to extricate the secret recipes was now $100,000 to the fire department that could save them. Suddenly, from up the road, a lone siren was heard as another fire truck came into sight. It was the fire engine of the nearby Lodi NJ Volunteer Fire Department, composed mainly of Italian firefighters over the age of 65. To everyone's amazement, the little rundown fire engine, operated by these Italian firefighters, passed fire engines parked outside the plant and drove straight into the middle of the inferno. Outside, the other firemen watched in amazement as the Italian old-timers jumped off and began to fight the fire, as if they were fighting to save their own lives. Within a short time, the Lodi old-timers had extinguished the fire and saved the secret recipes. The Grateful Sausage Company president joyfully announced that for such a superhuman accomplishment, he was raising the reward to $200,000 and walked over to personally thank each of the brave elderly Italian firefighters. A TV news crew rushed in after capturing the event on film. The on-camera reporter asked the Italian fire chief, "What are you going to do with all that money?" "Wella," said Chief Pasquale de Lucinella Vanti, the 70-year-old fire chief, "the first thing we're going to do is fix the brakes on the goddamn truck." An Italian man walks into the market, followed by his 10-year-old son. The kid is spinning a 25-cent piece in the air and catching it between his teeth. As they walk through the market, someone bumps into the boy at just the wrong moment, and the coin goes straight into his mouth and lodges in his throat. He immediately starts choking and going blue in the face, and the dad starts panicking, shouting and screaming for help. A middle-aged, fairly unremarkable Italian man in a gray suit is sitting at a coffee bar in the market, reading his newspaper and sipping a cup of coffee. At the sound of the commotion, he looks up, puts his coffee cup down on the saucer, neatly folds his newspaper, and places it on the counter. He gets up from his seat and makes his unhurried way across the market. Reaching the boy, who was still standing but just barely, the Italian man carefully takes hold of the kid's testicles and squeezes gently but firmly. After a few seconds, the boy convulses violently and coughs up the 25-cent piece, which the man catches in his free hand. Releasing the boy, the man hands the coin to the father and walks back to his seat in the coffee bar without saying a word. As soon as he is sure that his son has suffered no lasting ill effects, the father rushes over to the man and starts effusively thanking him. The man looks embarrassed and brushes off the father's thanks. As the man is about to leave, the father asks one last question. "I've never seen anybody do anything like that before. It was fantastic. What are you, a surgeon or something like that?" "Oh, good heavens, no," the man replies. "I work for the RSS." The wife came home early and found her husband in their bedroom making love to a very attractive young woman, and she was upset. "You're a disrespectful pig," she cried. "How dare you do this to me, a faithful wife, the mother of your children? I'm leaving you. I want a divorce right away." And the husband replied, "Hang on, just a minute, love, so at least I can tell you what happened." "Go ahead," she sobbed, "but they'll be the last words you'll say to me." And the husband began, "Well, I was getting into the car to drive home, and this young lady here asked me for a lift. She looked so down and out and defenseless that I took pity on her and let her into the car. I noticed that she was very thin, not well dressed, and very dirty. She told me that she hadn't eaten for 3 days, so, in my compassion, I brought her home and warmed up the enchiladas I made for you last night. The ones you wouldn't eat because you're afraid you'll put on weight." The poor thing devoured them in moments. Since she needed a good cleanup, I suggested a shower. And while she was doing that, I noticed her clothes were dirty and full of holes, so I threw them away. Then, as she needed clothes, I gave her the expensive designer jeans that you have had for a few years, but don't wear because you say they are too tight. I also gave her the underwear that was your anniversary present, which you don't wear because you said I don't have good taste. I found the sexy blouse my sister gave you for Christmas that you don't wear just to annoy her. And I also donated those boots you bought at the expensive boutique and don't wear because someone at work has a pair just like them. The husband took a quick breath and continued. She was so grateful for my understanding and help that as I walked her to the door, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, "Please, Do you have anything else that your wife doesn't use?